Sachs, you don't believe that millions...
But hold on. Those driver jobs weren't even there 10 years ago. Uber came along and created all these driver jobs.
Enough.
DoorDash created all these driver jobs. So what technology does, yes, technology destroys jobs, but it replaces them with opportunities that are even better. And then either you can go capture that opportunity yourself, or an entrepreneur will come along and create something that allows you to capture those opportunities. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this, but I don't think we know how to build AGI. But that's a much longer discussion.
Okay, put AGI aside. Yeah. Who's going to have the best model 5 years from now?
Hold on, I 100% agree with you.
I just think it's a different thing. But what we're building are these incredible natural language computers. And actually, David, in a very pithy way, summarized the two big use cases. It's search and it's homeworks. It's paperwork. It's really paperwork. And a lot of these jobs that we're talking about disappearing are actually paperwork jobs. They're paperwork shuffling. These are made up jobs. Like the federal government, as we're finding out through Doge, a third of it is like people digging holes with spoons, and another third are filling them back up. AI is a productivity tool. It increases the productivity of a worker. It allows them to do more creative work and less repetitive work. As such, it makes them more valuable. Yes, there is some retraining involved, but not a lot. These are natural language computers. You can talk to them in plain English, and they talk back to you in plain English. But I think David is absolutely right. I think we will see job creation by AI that will be as fast or faster than job destruction. You saw this even with the internet. Like YouTube came along. Look at all these YouTube streamers and influencers. That didn't used to be a job. New jobs, really opportunities, because job is a wrong word. Job implies someone else has to give it to me, and it's sort of like they're handed out. It's a zero-sum game. Forget all that. It's opportunities. After COVID, look at how many people are making money by working from home in mysterious little ways on the internet that you can't even quite grasp. The fastest way to help somebody get a job right now, if you know somebody in the market who's looking for a job, the best thing you can do is say, hey, go download the AI tools and just start talking to them. Just start using them in any way. And then you can walk into any employer in almost any field and say, hey, I understand AI, and they'll hire you on the spot. Another way to think about it is these are natural language computers. So everyone who's intimidated by computers before should no longer be intimidated. You don't need to program anymore in some esoteric language or learn some obscure mathematics to be able to use these. You can just talk to them and they talk back to you. That's magic. This one will hit #1. This one will go viral.
I think it could. If you have some really great, pithy insights, we might go right to the top.
I just got to do a and it'll go viral. Honestly, it's like I never thought I'd see it, but I think between Elon and Sachs and people like that, we actually have builders and doers and financially intelligent people and economically intelligent people in charge. And despite all the craziness, Elon's not doing this for the money. He's doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do.
Of course.
And
he moved into the Roosevelt.
I think like many of us, I had bought into the great forces of history mindset where it's just like, okay, it's inevitable. This is what's happening. Government always gets bigger, always gets slower.
Me too.
And we just have to try and get stuff built before they just shut everything down and we turn to Europe. But the thing that happened then was, Caesar crossed the Rubicon. The great man theory of history played out, and we're living in that time. And it's an inspiration to all of us, despite Sam Altman and Elon's current fighting. I know Sam was inspired by Elon at one point, and I think all of us are inspired by Elon. I mean, the guy can be the Diablo player and do Doge and run SpaceX and Tesla and Boring and Neuralink. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. That's why I'm doing a hardware company now. It makes me want to do something useful with my life. Elon always makes me question, am I doing something useful enough with my life? It's why I don't want to be an investor. Peter Thiel, ironically, he's an investor, but he's inspirational that way too, because he's like, the future just doesn't just happen. You have to go make it. So, we get to go make the future. And I'm just glad that Elon and Doge and others are making the future that I will live in.
What do we got going on here?
Maybe I'll reveal it on the All-In podcast in a couple of months. But it's really it's really difficult. I'm not sure I can pull it off. So let me try. Let me just make sure it's viable.
Is it drone related? Is it self-driving related?
Drones are cool, but no, it's not.
Maybe All-In podcast should be an angel investor.
Oh, yes. Let's do a syndicate.
Yeah.
Let's do a little syndicate.
No syndicate, Jason. Just our money.
What are you talking about? You know how I learned about syndicates was Naval. The first syndicate I ever did on AngelList, I think is still the biggest. I don't know. 5%, and Naval's my partner on this, for com.com.
I think you'll love what I'm working on if I pull it off. I think you guys will love it. I'd love to show you a demo.
Let us know where to send the check.
Definitely what you're saying in that there's leverage. But at the same time, I think the more interesting part is that new startups are enabled that could not exist otherwise. My last startup, AirChat, could not have existed without AI because we needed the transcription and translation. Even the current thing I'm working on, it's not an AI company, but it cannot exist without AI. It is relying on AI. even at AngelList, we're significantly adopting AI. Like everywhere you turn, it's more opportunity, more opportunity, more opportunity. And people like to go on Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, and basically they like to exaggerate. Like, oh my God, we've hit AGI. Oh my God, I just replaced all my mid-level engineers. Oh my God, I've stopped hiring. To me, that's like moronic. The two valid ones are the one-man entrepreneur shows where there's like one guy or one gal and they're like scaling up like crazy thanks to
Phil
AI.
Kaplan, shout out.
Or there are people who are embracing AI and being like, I need to hire. And I need to hire anyone who can even spell AI. Like anyone who's even used AI. Just come on in, come on in. Again, I would say the easiest way to see that AI is not taking jobs but creating opportunities is go brush up on your AI, learn a little bit, watch a few videos, use the AI, tinker with it, and then go reapply for that job that rejected you and watch how they pull you in. I think the idea that America should win, great. I think that we should not regulate. I also agree with. I'm not an AI doomer. I don't think AI is going to end the world. That's a separate conversation. But there's just a religion that comes along in many faces, which is that, oh, climate change is going to end the world. AI is going to end the world. Asteroids going to end the world. COVID-19 is going to end the world. And it just has a way of fixating your attention, right? It captures everybody's attention at once. So it's a very seductive thing. And I think in the case of AI, it's really been overplayed by incentive bias, motivated reasoning by the companies who are ahead and they want to pull up the ladder behind them. I think they genuinely believe it. I think they genuinely believe that there's safety risks, but I think they're motivated to believe in those safety risks, and then they pass that along. But it's kind of a weird position because they have to say, oh, it's so dangerous that you shouldn't just let open source go at it, and you should let just a few of us work with you on it. But it's not so dangerous that a private company can't own the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. Because if it was truly the Manhattan Project, if they were building nuclear weapons, you wouldn't want one company to own that.
No.
Sam Altman's famously said that AI will capture the light cone of all future value. In other words, like all value ever created at the speed of light from here will be captured by AI. So if that's true, then I think open source AI really matters, and little tech AI really matters. The problem is that the nature of training these models is highly centralized. They benefit from supercomputer clustered compute. So it's not clear how any decentralized model can compete. So to me, the real issue boils down to is how do you push AI forward while not having just a very small number of players control the entire thing? And we thought we had that solution with the original OpenAI, which was a nonprofit and was supposed to do it for humanity. But now, because of they want to incentivize the team and they want to raise money, they have to privatize at least a part of it. Although it's not clear to me why they need to privatize the whole thing. Like, why do you need to buy out the nonprofit portion? You could leave a nonprofit portion and you could have the private portion for the incentives. But I think that the real challenge is how do you keep AI from naturally centralizing? Because all the economics and the technology underneath are centralizing in nature. If you really think you're going to create God, do you want to put God on a leash with one entity controlling God? That to me is the real fear. I'm not scared of AI. I'm scared of what a very small number of people who control AI do to the rest of us for our own good, because that's how it always works.
Should we shut the border and not let the next Naval, Chamath, Sachs, and Friedberg into the country?
Well, let me declare my biases up front. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I moved here when I was 9 years old. Or rather, my parents did, and then I naturalized citizen. So obviously, I'm in favor of some level of immigration. That said, I'm assimilated. I consider myself an American first and foremost. I bleed red, white, and blue. I believe in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, first and second and fourth and all the proper amendments. I get up there every July 4th and I deliberately defend the Second Amendment on Twitter, at which point half my followers go bananas. Because I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to be a good immigrant, right? And carry the usual set of coherent leftist policies, globalist policies. So I think that legal high-skill immigration with room and time for assimilation makes sense. You want to have a brain drain on the best and brightest coming to the freest country in the world to build technology and to help civilization move forward. And as Chamath was saying, economic power and military power is downstream of technology. In fact, even culture is downstream of technology. Look at what the birth control pill did, for example, to culture, or what the automobile did to culture, or what radio and television did to culture, and then the internet. So technology drives everything. And if you look at wealth, wealth is a set of physical transformations that you can effect. And that's a combination of capital and knowledge. And the bigger input to that is knowledge. And so the US has become the home of knowledge creation thanks to bringing in the best and brightest. You could even argue DeepSeek, part of the reason why we lost that is because a bunch of those kids, they studied in the US, but then we sent them back home.
Right.
So I think you absolutely
Is that actually accurate? That they were...
Yeah. Some.
A few of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's like Exhibit A. Wow, I didn't know that.
So I think you absolutely have to split skilled, assimilated immigration, which is a small set, and it has to be both. They have to both be skilled and they have to become Americans. That oath is not meaningless, right? It has to mean something. So skilled, assimilated immigration, you have to separate that from just open borders, whoever can wander in, just come on in. That latter part makes no sense. I would agree heavily with one point, and I would just tweak another. The point I would agree with is that it's going to happen anyway, and that's what DeepSeek proved. You can turn off the flow of chips to them, and you can turn off the flow of talent. What do? They just get more efficient, and they exported it back to us. They sent us back the best open source model when our guys were staying closed source for safety reasons. The part where I would tweak a little bit is the idea that we are going to win. By we, when you say America, the problem is that the best way to win is to be as open, as distributed, as innovative as possible. If this all ends up in the control of one company, they're actually going to be slower to innovate than if there's a dynamic system. And that dynamic system, by its nature, will be open. It will leak to China. It will leak to India. But these things have powerful network effects. We know this about technology. Almost all technology has network effects underneath. And so even if you are open, you're still going to win. Yeah. To keep the conversation moving, let me segue a point that came up that was really important into tariffs. And the point is, even though the internet was open, the US won a lot of the internet. A lot of US companies won the internet. Yep. And they won that because we got there the firstest with the mostest, as they say in the military. And that matters because a lot of technology businesses have scale economies and network effects underneath. Even basic brand-based network effects. If you go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, very few people would have predicted that we would have ended up with Amazon basically owning all of e-commerce. You would have thought it would have been a perfect competition and very spread out. And that applies to how we ended with Uber as basically one taxi service, or we end up with
Airbnb.
Meta, Airbnb. It's just network effects rule the world around me. But when it comes to tariffs and when it comes to trade, we act like network effects don't exist. The classic Ricardian comparative advantage dogma says that you should produce what you're best at, I produce what I'm best at, and we trade. And then even if you want to charge me more for it, if you want to impose tariffs for me to ship to you, I should still keep tariffs down because I'm better off. You're just selling me stuff cheaply, great. Or if you want to subsidize your guys, great, you're selling me stuff cheaply. The problem is that is not how most modern businesses work. Most modern businesses have network effects. As a simple thought experiment, suppose that we have two countries, right? I'm China, you're the US. I start out by subsidizing all of my companies and industries that have network effects. So I'll subsidize TikTok, I'll ban your social media, but I'll push mine. I will subsidize my semiconductors, which tend to have winner take all in certain categories, or I'll subsidize my drones, and then
BYD.
BYD, self-driving, whatever. And then when I win, I own the whole market and I can raise prices. And if you try to start up a competitor, then it's too late. I've got network effects. Or if I've got scale economies, I can lower my price to zero, crash you out of business. No one in their right mind will invest, and I'll raise prices right back up. So you have to understand that certain industries have hysteresis, or they have network effects, or they have economies of scale. And these are all the interesting ones. These are all the high margin businesses. So in those, if somebody is subsidizing or they're raising tariffs against you to protect your industries and let them develop, you do have to do something. You can't just completely back down. And there is a difference between different kinds of jobs. Those kinds of jobs are better jobs. Building difficult things at scale physically that we need for both national security and for innovation. Those are better jobs than, paperwork, writing essays for other people to read.
Yeah.
Or even driving cars. There's also a good old video by Ilya Sutskever where he was I believe the founding chief scientist or CTO of OpenAI. And he talks about how these large language models are basically extreme compressors. And he models them entirely as their ability to compress. And they're lossy
compression. Exactly.
Lossy extreme compression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Google got sued for fair use back in the day. But the way they managed to get past the argument was they were always linking back to you. They showed you a tiny bit and they sent you the traffic. They sent you the traffic. I think the New York Times content is worthless to an LLM, but that's a different story. I think the actual valuable content is different.
Political reasons, whatever. But
wait, David. In that case, can a Google crawler just crawl an entire site and serve it on Google? Why can't they do that?
So here's the fair use. The fair use is you cannot repeat the content. You cannot take the content and repeat it.
That is how the law is currently written. But now what I have is I have a tool that can remix it with 50 other pieces of similar content, and I can change the words slightly and maybe even translate into different language. So where does it stop? Yeah, but there are entire sites like Stack Overflow and WikiHow that are basically disappeared now because you can just swallow them all up and you can just spit it all back out in ChatGPT with slight changes. So I think that the
but
first
I think the
and
fair
fourth
use is how much of a slight change is exactly the right question.
Which
is how much are you changing?
Yeah, so that's the question. And it actually boils down to the AGI question. Are these things actually intelligent and are they learning or are they compressing and regurgitating? That's the question.
Right, that's
it's
the hard
very
part.
hard to figure that out, which is why I come back to there's only one of two stable solutions to this. And it's going to happen anyway. If we don't crawl it, the Chinese will crawl it, right? DeepSeek proved that. So there's only one of two stable solutions. Either you pay the copyright holders, which I actually think doesn't work. And the reason is because someone in China will crawl it and they just dump the weights, right? So they can just crawl and compress and dump the compressed weights. Or if you crawl, make it open. At least contribute something back to open source, right? You crawled open data, contributed back to open source. And the people who don't want to be crawled, they're going to have to go to huge lengths to protect their data. Now everybody knows to protect the data. I think in OpenAI's defense, they do need to raise a lot of money and they got to incent their employees. But that doesn't mean they need to take over the whole thing. That the nonprofit portion can still stay the nonprofit portion and get the lion's share of the benefits and be the board. And then he can have an incentive package and employees can have an incentive package.
Yeah, why don't they get a percentage of the revenue? Just give them like 10% of the revenue goes to the team.
Bought out right now for $40 billion and then the whole thing disappears into a closed system. That part makes no sense to me.
That's called a shell game and a scam.
Yeah, I think Sam and his team would do better to leave the nonprofit part alone, leave an actual independent nonprofit board in charge, and then have a strong incentive plan and a strong fundraising plan for the investors and the employees. So I think this is workable. It's just trying to grab it all. It just seems way off, especially when it was built on open algorithms from Google, open data from the web, and on a nonprofit funding from Elon and others. But even equity, they could give equity to the people building it, but they could still leave it in the control of the nonprofit. I just don't understand this conversion. I mean, there was a board coup, right? The board tried to fire Sam, and Sam took over the board. Now it's his handpicked board, so it also looks like self-dealing, right? And yeah, they'll get an independent valuation, but we all know that game. You hire a valuation expert who's going to say what you're going to say, and they'll check the box. But if they're going to capture the light cone of all future value or build super intelligence, we know that's worth a lot more. That's why Elon just bid $100 billion.
Namaste, Naval. I am the world's greatest moderator. We'll see you next time on the All In Pod. Namaste, bitches.
Bye-bye.